Raise your hands all up in the air.
And we're back with the Digital Press Podcast, Season 3, Episode 8. And I'm Frankie.
Mike.
Greg.
And on the phone with us, we have Paul Solomine.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, Paul. So, Paul has done something exciting for those of us who are here in North Jersey and a part of the classic gaming community. NAVA regulars at the Digital Press store have seen Paul promoting his upcoming, now fully funded video game show called A Video Game Convention.
Yep.
In September, right?
Yep, it's going down September 19th, all day Saturday, and we're set in place in Parsippany.
Excellent. So, give us the pitch. Tell the 11 people that listen to the Digital Press Podcast what they can expect from your video game convention.
Sure. Well, it's going to go down Saturday, September 19th, all day from 10 a.m. until well past midnight, and that is due to the fact that we are going to have numerous tournaments running as well as entertainment running, so we're not really going to set an end time on it because we are lucky enough to have the entire venue reserved for as long as we want, and we don't have any limits, which is a great thing. And basically right now on the Kickstarter, because the Kickstarter campaign is still running, you can get tickets for $10 in advance. We're going to have a second round of pre-registration, which would probably be through like Eventbrite or ShowClicks or something like that for $15, and then we're planning to do it for $20 at the door. So obviously, we're trying to get people to get tickets as soon as possible. And the beautiful thing is we have the entire Parsippany PAL, which is a local recreation center here in Parsippany, New Jersey, and that's 36,000 square feet. So we have a ton of room for a first-year convention. And, to summarize it, it might be a con or a convention, but we're more so of an expo or a festival at this point because we don't just have a vendor room where we're bringing in all the local video game sellers, resellers, collectors that might have an overrun of their own collection selling stuff, but we're going to also have a huge room with free play, and it's going to have every console from NES to present, which is the current plan. And in that gaming room, there's also going to be the tournaments for Mortal Kombat X, various versions of Street Fighter, and various versions of Super Smash Brothers, as well as indie game developers in the gaming room. But we're also going to have a gigantic room with a stage with a ton of music events, rock bands playing video game covers, chiptune DJs, and even a video game-themed Burlesque Show. And the coolest addition that will also be in the same room as the music events will be an arcade with tons of cabinets, because we just recently got involved with Richie Knuckles from Flemington, New Jersey, who has a pretty awesome arcade with a lot of classics from the golden era of gaming. And him, as well as a local collector in Morris Plains, New Jersey, are planning to bring somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 cabinets to line up that room with them. So that'll be on free play as well. And we'll also have a room with panels. So panels will be going on all day. And, we have some special guests. I don't know if you want to go into that now, but a recent special guest that was just announced was Billy Mitchell, of course, of King of Kong fame. And, obviously he holds a few world records in the golden age of era gaming games. And, of course, he was the main focus of that documentary, as well as various other video game documentaries.
Yep, Billy gets around. He's definitely done a great job of being a self-promoter,
Yeah.
which, nothing wrong with that. He's got some skills to back it up.
Yeah.
Now...
Can I just interject one thing?
No, you're not allowed.
Paul, tell us more about this burlesque show.
Yeah, sure. You know what? It's funny because a lot of people, that is the first question that they ask. And, the cool thing is that I, have been friends with a lot of people in the burlesque community. And, one of my good friends, she's a great producer of these shows. Her name is Lily Stitches. She does a lot of things at comic book conventions and so forth. And recently, last year at 2014 Too Many Games, they actually had a video game themed burlesque show as well. And, of course, I'll give them the original, credit for that idea. But, just having so many connections in the burlesque community, I reached out to my friend Lily Stitches, and she put that together, within a few days and got a bunch of acts together. And I don't want to expose their specific acts, but, I can tell you it will obviously be video game themed. And, they do a lot of things related to video game cosplay. So a lot of their costumes are really authentic and awesome. And, you'll see a few characters. Obviously, most likely they might do a little gender bender stuff, but they'll be doing a few female characters that we all know and love, and throwing some sexy twists in there. And another cool thing about the burlesque show is that we've been offering a VIP ticket for burlesque, and I got to give a lot of credit to my friend Lily Stitches, because that brought a big draw, and that was a $65 reward on the Kickstarter, so to speak, and that was actually the first to go. So we got a lot of people interested in that, and obviously that's going to be more of the nightlife aspect of the convention, but that'll draw people to come during the day, or maybe draw people to just come solely for the nighttime aspect and do more so the music events, the burlesque, and the free play.
Sure. Now, this is, I assume, an all ages show, the actual convention itself, right?
Yeah, definitely. We're not going to have any restrictions except that burlesque show, and we're going to be...
You're going to card for the burlesque show?
Yeah, we're going to have to card that, and that'll be, pretty locked down. It's in a separate room, so we're not really worried about that. And actually related to that, we will most likely be checking IDs at the door because... it's not official yet, but most likely Buffalo Wild Wings will be on the premises selling alcohol. So that's pretty cool as well. Whenever you hear that and people are like, hey, I can drink at the convention, play some games, and, that'll bring a good crowd. But it is all ages, and, we'll make sure that the right people should be in the right place. So. Sure.
I have some fun experience organizing both the Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas with Joe Santulli, John Hardy, and Sean Kelly, as well as the Classic Gaming Free Play Room at PAX East for several years with Joe and Digital Press. And gaming conventions are, it's a pretty crazy scene. It gets... there's, you could have thousands of people coming through a room in a matter of hours, and it's it can be a pretty exciting thing. What made you want to run a gaming convention?
Well, the thing is that, related to a lot of the shows that you're speaking about right now, I always wanted to make an effort to go there, and it just all came down to the fact of location. We're here in North Jersey, and, off the top of my head, the closest one would have to probably be Too Many Games. Too Many Games is a solid, 2.5-hour drive from our area to get down there, and well worth it, by the way. Too Many Games is a great video game convention, but I wanted to bring it, to our area as well as the New York City metro area, so, people from around here could hop in their car and, 30 minutes or less, an hour or less, and have that same great experience. And it was just so strange to me that it didn't exist here in New Jersey when, the classic video game scene is so large here.
Or even in New York, that's another big question mark. New York, for such a densely populated city and state, it's kind of strange to me that there's not a lot going on in the way of classic gaming. There's one store that's still in operation in New York, and it's you'd think this would be a hotbed of classic gaming.
Well, as we've always said, that many classic gamers are cheap. So
or introverted and not.
Yeah, well, I mean, the current game companies have a presence at the major comic book conventions. New York ComicCon, for instance, they're always there. They're always all over the floor there. So they do show up at the major ones.
Actually, not to cut you off, man, but that is another reason why I'm doing this, because I personally have gone to New York Comic-Con since the beginning, and I will say last year it's official that the a lot of the big developers or companies or publishers haven't been present. The only ones to have a large presence at New York Comic-Con 2014 were pretty much Capcom and I think Devolver, who are responsible for the latest Shadow Warrior, and I think they did. Didn't they do Hotline Miami, or am I mistaken? Was that them?
No, Hotline Miami was Devolver Digital, and it was published by. Oh my gosh, I should. It was produced by Denaton. Yeah, I know it is. It's produced by Denaton Games and published by Devolver Digital.
Okay, so
or no,
them as the publisher, they were there, and I think the only other gaming stuff that I saw was maybe like, of course, Video Games New York. They're at every convention, but in comparison to previous years, there was no, new builds of games, no indie developers, nothing at New York Comic-Con. And that was one of the big things that drove me to do this because of that it just seemed like the comic book conventions are almost eliminating the video game factor, even though most comic book conventions are more so a celebration of pop culture across the board. And, even relating to our conversation about New York City, I'm looking at analytics on who's signing up for the convention pre-registration, who's going to the Facebook page, who's going to our website, who's checking the emails I send out, and the majority actually is from New York City. So
that's good. Yeah, I mean, I would say the area is pretty starved for something like this. They get comic book conventions, and they get a lot of pop culture style conventions, things like Chiller, like Greg's a big fan of the autograph hunting, but video game conventions, yeah, you're definitely you're filling a need, I think, in this arena.
So, Paul, how long was it between first conception of the idea to where it is now, or to September when it opens? Like, how long was the process, would you say?
It's got to be well over, in total, from the point of like initial brainstorming and really scoping things out and doing a lot of market research to see if there was something that was feasible. Probably a year and a half will be the total. It was probably like a solid half a year of just like me brainstorming and talking to friends and those who are actually involved in our con committee until, we started actually advertising it. Like we started, the Facebook page and the website and like started promoting probably September 2014, so a year ahead of time. And, we did some research that was the bare minimum, a year to have a successful first year of promotion. And, that's where it came to be. Like the initial 6 months of brainstorming were just me going to, more conventions than I ever did before. I now do something, I think, every weekend at this point. I'm at different comic book convention, different anime convention, a different video game convention, just to talk to people and promote, as well as just to see what mistakes they make, what good ideas they have, and put that towards my idea. So it's been, solid it'll be a year and a half total before the actual day of the convention.
Well, as a many-year, multiple-time convention goer of many different conventions in many different areas, the only, the one, I guess, word of caution that I could give you, and you've probably heard this, is I've seen, just from my experience, the biggest thing that people, especially if they go to a convention the first time, they become dissatisfied or angry with, is when the conventions seem like they oversell and there's not enough room and the fire marshals have to come in, or people come expecting they expect to arrive, park reasonably, they walk in, they do whatever they want to do, and then they leave and not have to wait forever or anything like that. So obviously it'd be great if you could sell that many tickets, but I would also just a little cause of concern is if it gets a little too crazy, then what you wind up doing is you wind up having a lot of angry people, really for no reason.
Yeah, we definitely took that into consideration too. Right now our place can fit a maximum of 3,000 people, and just based on analytics for how many people are actually constantly checking our social media, our websites, and so forth. Right now we're looking at a bare minimum of 1,000 people in attendance, and that's a good number to have because, number one, it's not going to be too crazy. Number two, it's not scaring off people to actually come and become a vendor or become a guest or something like that. But it's like a state point. The only thing that I don't want to scare anyone off is just the fact of just the location, and this is a problem that I've seen at many places, just normally parking. And, I imagine that it's going to be very similar to places that are of my size convention whenever it's sold out, because I really think it is going to be a popular day, and I think everyone's going to come out within the classic gaming community. But the only thing I would expect people to be a little bit upset with, if they have to take at maximum a 5-minute walk to to the actual location.
5 minutes? How dare you? I will not stand for it. I only make room for 1 minute of walking time per day in my busy schedule.
As a convention goer myself, I don't want to drop the names of the other conventions because that's not fair to them, because a lot of people I know have put out great shows, and it's a great problem to have. But, sometimes I had to walk myself, but it ended up being a great time regardless.
Yeah, hey, selling a lot of tickets and having a lot of people come to your convention is the kind of problem you want to have,
Yeah.
Better than the opposite.
The very first, I've been at almost every single PAX East since they started, and the very first one that they had was at a different convention center in Boston than they wound up making their actual home base for PAX East. And it was a big convention center. It was bigger than any convention center I've ever been in, bigger than Jacob Javits or any of the local ones to us. And it was too small the first year. They had, sold out in minutes, as PAX typically does, and there was maybe 60 or 70,000 people, and they were not satisfied with the size of the space. I didn't feel like it was, uncomfortable. You could still walk around and do what you needed to do, but the people organizing the convention were like, "Oh, this is way too small. We need a bigger place." So it's the kind of problem you want to have.
Yeah, and the good thing is about my convention is that we planned ahead, and everything's dropped into subcommittees. We got one person overseeing all the music, one person overseeing all of gaming free play, one person specifically doing all the tournaments involved, and actually it's split between Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat tournaments, and one person's overseeing all of the Super Smash Brothers tournaments, because as we know, Super Smash Brothers is a beast all on its own.
That sounds pretty complicated. What made you... Is this based on research that you had done at other conventions, or did you speak to other convention organizers where you said, I need to form a committee and a subcommittee within my own convention organization?
Yeah, definitely. As I talked to a lot of people, I spoke to, the guys in Too Many Games. In fact, a lot of people within our organization at a Video Game Con have run a lot of anime conventions, and they've been involved with volunteering and so forth. And, ultimately at the end of the day, I took all suggestions to, make sure it was successful based on that. Like, I'm pretty sure it's very common practice, and I more so see this in the anime convention, side of this, because anime conventions most of the time are run by the fans and not like an organization or a company. So I'm sort of taking the normal process of how an anime convention is ran and applying that to a video game con.
Well, hey, if there's already a framework in place that you can transpose, sounds like the way to do it. What if you had to sell a video game convention in one sentence to our viewers who have still been on the fence about it? Sell them now, because we're gonna let you go and we're gonna wrap up. So, Paul, sell a video game convention.
Well, Video Game Con is going to be the best video game event that will ever happen in New Jersey, and that is because I've just been gaining the whole army, getting every person from this local area to come to it and make it happen. And it's also a good idea to jump on this now because the tickets are the cheapest, and they're only $10, and you can get those at videogamecon.com/Kickstarter to donate to the Kickstarter campaign. And, we're going to have a blast. It's going to be a blast on September 19th, 2015.
And we're back.
Come on out, guys.
And we are going to discuss a new project that has come up on the web. It's called the Retro VGS. It's going to be the first cartridge-based video game console since Nintendo 64?
Home console, not portable console.
You're right, okay.
Excluding those.
Yes, excluding the continuation of proliferation of cartridge media on the DS and Vita systems.
The R-Zone.
Yeah, and the R-Zone. Well, then, were those really cartridges? Those were those
cards.
Those were those fully. Everything was like the CPU and everything. I think was on the actual
a disc.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so has it been since the Nintendo 64? Was that was the last
one I could think of?
Well, I mean, there was those.
There probably some Chinese
VTech.
Yeah.
Those VTech stupid kitty things that had like Scooby-Doo games and that kind of crap.
Yeah, I'm sure Len Herman could probably tell us historically, like when they were produced, what company made them, what year they were released. But
in terms of
since the Nintendo 64, this is going to be the reintroduction of cartridge-based video game console in the most traditional sense.
Completely proprietary.
Yep, completely proprietary. It's not going to be an Android, from everything we know now.
Yeah, it's running on an FPGA.
Right. It's a RISC-based system, proprietary programming language for that console. It's going to be the same as if you were a programmer for the old Nintendo or Sega Genesis, like how you'd probably have to you'd probably have to get some kind of development kit, program the games, or maybe they'll have a tool set for PCs that they'll be able to program these games in, but they'll have to dump code to cartridge, test it on the thing, or run it in some kind of test environment. I mean, it's crazy. It's going to be a real, for reals, cartridge-based video games. You see these people driving by, they're upset about it. They're like, we can't put cartridges. Oh, that makes me need to honk my horn.
Well, full disclosure, we called a friend and said that every time we say something you agree with, as you're driving around the store, just keep.
We got a guy out in the front with the sign. Honk if you. Honk if you.
He's got like a live feed to our podcast as we record in a closed studio environment.
Right. So this is being developed. Well, the spearhead of this is Mike Kennedy and his group. I guess they're just retro. They're called Retro, but they run the Game Gavel auction website. They created last year the new Retro classic gaming magazine, which we've
talked about on the show.
I love it. and also they've also as of last year took over the reins of CGE in Las Vegas. So, I mean, you know, Mike is Joe Santulli he always told me that he said Mike is a go-getter. He takes these projects and he makes them happen. So that's I'm not doubting that this thing will come out because of that.
No, let me preface also, because I know what direction we're going in. I have no ill will towards this project or Mike or the concept of. I mean, I'm a classic gamer. I love playing games on cartridge. I love retro consoles. I love collecting. I love handling those things. I like the history of the industry. But we both are looking for, as you said, that devil's advocacy position. Who is going to buy this?
Well, conceptually, here's what... And this is not coming from me. This is coming from people I know, such as our friend Stephanie and Leon of our Brooklyn Bites podcast. They have a better take on it than I do, only because I don't really think about these things as much. And one of their points was that, you know, it's about collectors, and it's about this concept of having something physically. I mean, I know tons of collectors and YouTube collecting personalities who absolutely revile. They don't want to have anything to do with digital games. They want physical copies. They don't care how good the digital game is. They want the physical copy. And this project, conceptually, theoretically, is maybe the last way to do it as the newer generation consoles start moving into the digital realm. So that's conceptually that's one place. I think another place for it is, you were saying Android, for instance. There's the Android OS, or there's iOS, or whatever. And for a lot of the developers, indie developers who are working on these kinds of games, these are, I guess, from what I've heard, this might be a better way for them to sell directly. You know, to sell to their specific niche, let's say.
Well, it definitely offers, you know, another avenue for aspiring designers and developers to enter some sort of, like, as small as a market as it likely will be. It's a way of getting their material out there.
Yeah, this isn't... I can't imagine that this would be a ripe, low-hanging fruit for, someone who's just beginning as an indie developer and is looking to get material out there for people to... I mean, it's the polar opposite on the spectrum of the App Store, of the Google Play Store, where you can make something very small, you can put it out there, and then there are literally a billion people that have it in their pockets without, you know, it's distributed to a billion people through those channels. All they need to do is choose to download it, right? This console... And
because it's digital, it's only for a few dollars.
Right. So
you're going from, you know, as you say, maybe you could sell, let's say you sell a game at $2.99. I don't know how much game's called. So it's $2.99, let's say, hypothetically, and you could sell that to 100,000 people. You know, you've made $300,000 gross revenue.
Sure.
Now, if you flip that and say, okay, we're going to sell the game for $29.99, but it's probably going to be more than that. It's probably $49.99. But we have to figure in the cartridge manufacturing costs, and we figure in the development costs for that, but also the manufacturing costs, the boxes and the manuals. You put all that together. Let's say,
are the labels for the cartridge going to be done in the same place that molds the plastic? Is it going to have to be shipped from person A to person B to do that? Is that a separate cost? You know, like, they're going to have to come up with all these things. And these are guys that have connections to hobbyist level people who have manufactured repro cartridges, repro console shells, things like that.
They're expensive to do one-offs.
Exactly. So, I mean, these are people that have some level of experience with that. These are not, they're not green. They're not going in with no research. I mean, these are people that have done repro games for classic systems for years and years and years, and now they're saying let's, or maybe they've been involved in some commercial ventures for real game consoles, but let's make our own, do our own thing with this.
Right, but as I'm saying, you're going from, let's say you could sell 100,000 copies at $2.99, or let's even say $4.99, and now you flip it to, if it's $49.99, that's a tenfold increase in the price. So did you just go from 100,000 to 10,000, or even lower? I mean, you would have to sell 10,000 copies at, well, even more because of the cost to manufacture. You may have to sell 25,000 copies or 20,000 copies to get even with the guys who are selling on Android and iOS, and if they have enough backing, 360, Xbox Live or PS whatever, and so that's I don't know. To me, that seems. Well,
I don't think they're
risky.
Competing.
I know they're not competing.
They're not competing with that market, but there's the inevitable comparison. You can't avoid it because in this day and age, retro gaming and that kind of throwback style permeates that indie scene. So the kind of things that they're going to be developing for the retro VGS, the kind of 2D platformers and pixel art styled games, are games that are available, not just on Android and iOS, but you can get them. They're kind of like the primary thing you can get these days on PS4. If you're like a PS4 owner, a game like Bloodborne, like a console exclusive big hit game, only comes around once a year. And throughout the course of the rest of the calendar year, you're getting lots of these retro indie games on the marketplace.
Well, that was it. Well, you hit on the word, which was the word that Stephanie had brought up on her podcast, which is exclusivity.
Yeah.
And they question, will there be if there's exclusivity with some of these indie developed games, then maybe you have some weight to it. You gotta have exclusive titles to buy a system, because historically I know I would buy a console growing up. I'd have a Nintendo, and then when something came out on Genesis that I had to have that was never coming to Nintendo and never coming to Super Nintendo and never anywhere else, I want to play Sonic, I got to buy a Genesis. You want that system seller. You want that gold standard, the game. What is the game that you're going to want to buy a retro VGS for? So, all right, so here's, I guess, my devil's advocate position. Conceptually, I don't know if I would buy it or whatever. Conceptually, I kind of like the idea. I like the idea of a cartridge system. I collect all the cartridge systems, that kind of a thing. And maybe, conceptually, I like all that stuff, collecting the stuff. And if they're new games, and they're going to be, more probably closer to like Saturn level or PlayStation level 2D, that interested me. Here's where my interest kind of fell off the map. And again, I'm not blaming them, because I don't know all the math. I don't know all the finances behind it. So what happened was, at some point of the last couple of years, they obtained original, cast iron injection molds. Thank you, for the Atari Jaguar's console and cartridges. I guess these molds were cheap enough to find compared to other systems, many of which probably would have come from Japan, because Nintendo made all their cartridges in Japan, and Sega probably made most of theirs in Japan, etc. Despite the fact that there today are tons of companies who make repro cases for Super Nintendo and Genesis and NES, which are universal inside. You put any chip in there that won't fit in one of the old, original OEM cases. They'll fit in there, and yet they chose the Jaguar case.
I speculate, and I could be wrong. This is just me. I feel like this is not so much a matter of convenience for them, but it probably is, hey, we know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who's got the Jaguar molds. You guys want to buy the Jaguar molds? Hey, I got some Jaguar molds for sale here. Hey, who wants a Jaguar mold? Anybody got I can't imagine that being the go-to, it's got to be a Jaguar. It's got to look like a Jaguar. Everybody loves the Jaguar because nobody loved the Jaguar.
Yeah,
everybody hated the Jaguar. No, I mean
hate the Jaguar.
there are some people in the classic gaming community that love the Jaguar. It's their favorite system. They are far and away the outliers. I hate to break that news to you, Jaguar fans. There's a couple great games on the system, but it's widely regarded as Atari's last commercial venture / failure. And, Mike and I were talking about this before the show. If you are a huge Jaguar fan, do you want a retro VGS that looks exactly like your Jaguar on your gaming console shelf next to your Jaguar? Like,
all these people bought in the Kickstarter. A lot of people paid for the clear plastic Jaguar molds for their Jaguars.
Right, the Jaguar. And that's possibly a big part of why maybe they know that there's deep interest in something like this seated within the portion of the community that is enthusiastic enough about repro Jaguar molds.
It probably would have served the console better, though, to design an original look that just looked very 90s or something like that. Something that was in that same kind of design as a Super Nintendo
that
or
may
Jaguar.
have sold it on me.
We are in 2015. There is no better time for a venture like this to use the technology that is readily available in 3D printing and laser etching and all of these. Even if you don't own a 3D printer, you can now design something in a CAD file and send it to a company that will 3D print something for you or create like a mold of some kind. Like, I don't really fully understand why they decided to go with the Jaguar molds. And this is a question, if we ever, speak to them about, we can ask them directly. But I would have, if I was in charge of this, I would have created something from scratch, designed something from the ground up that was unique.
But reminiscent of
the era.
And where the cartridges had end labels. There's no end labels on the Jaguar cartridges.
Yeah, maybe they can modify the molds for they just cut off that horrible, that weird convex handle, that piece of macaroni on the top of the Jaguar cartridge, that long elbow noodle. What is that?
I don't know.
So yeah.
And then the last thing was, and I don't have experience with it, but I believe you do. The controller that they now again, it's going to have USB controller ports. You can probably plug in any USB controller you want. But
yeah, hopefully that's the case.
The wireless controller that comes with it, apparently you're not fond of.
I unfortunately have experience with the controller that they've picked out to use. You may recognize it if you are a Wii owner, and a few years back there was a retro controller made for the Wii that looks like a Wii U Classic controller with a Super Nintendo controller molded into the top of it. Aesthetically, it looks fantastic. It feels good in your hands. I bought it. The controls on it, the D-pad, the analogs, the buttons, they were some of the worst action I've ever felt on any controller ever. I played around with it for a few days. It was one of those situations where, like, if you push left, it would register as up and left no matter what you did, or one of the analogs, the dead zone, didn't work right. It was horrible. It was so bad. I took it apart. I cleaned all the contacts. It's like, there's got to be maybe it's something simple. Yeah, it was brand new. And I said, well, maybe it's, let me look online. Maybe there's a troubleshooting. Maybe there's some other people that had other experiences. If you go to the Amazon page for these things from the actual manufacturer, there's like thousands of horrible reviews for it.
Is that Bluetooth or is it infrared?
No, it's Bluetooth. It's not an IR controller.
All right, so now, Mike, let's say you're on the fence here and you're thinking about getting this. Now, I've heard, this is rumored, but I've heard the price point for the console is between $150 and $200.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough sell without seeing the software. I mean, because if that so 150 to 200,
and you've got to clear off the dining room table to fit the Jaguar on. It's
plus the cost of the games. Yeah, I mean, I can't. I mean, if you're telling me this right now without seeing
Wait,
any more,
hold on. Maybe, and again, this is devil's advocate here. Maybe the price point and the cartridges is also to bring back the feeling of going to a store 20, 25 years ago and paying $150 for a game console and $50 a game. What do you think?
I think there's a certain level of nostalgia doesn't cross into.
I think it's a good price point for the console. I think between $100 and $200 is acceptable for something that is intended to be a home video game console. I think, unfortunately for them, and it's probably not their audience that they're going for, but me as somebody who moves between camps, who enjoys the classic retro collecting, that physical box and manual porn, kind of like, oh, look at this box, I put it on my shelf and I can take it off my shelf, and I look at this book, I can open it up and smell it. It smells like fresh printing. Like, I get that. I totally understand. That's their market. But I'm also in the Venn diagram of, like, I'm in the intersection where I also like the fact that I can turn on my PlayStation 4 or my 3DS or my, go on my iPad and get a game that's like AAA quality for 99 cents. I like that. That's something that the modern market has been trained into, like, 2D games, retro games, pixel style games, RPGs that look like old JRPGs. All of those things, those go hand in hand now with bargain price point. Like, you're not going to want to pay $50.
I think one of the issues too is that a lot of whatever, like, you want to call it nostalgia or whatever kind of, like, attachment you have to, like, the physical items. At the time, there was no nostalgia. That was just the new products. New products came on cartridges. That's just how it was.
Yeah.
So when you look back on that era, you appreciate the era for what it was. But, to have new products now that go back, it's like, I mean, do people buy VHSs anymore? Would you buy the Avengers on VHS?
No, but
I mean,
but for the the thing is, for the collectors, and they've done this with Blu-ray movies where they've tried to spruce up the box, so or like the Ghostbusters DVD comes in, set came in a firehouse, for instance. But they do the modern games. I mean, you get those limited editions that come, the whole.
Oh no! I mean, look, little throwbacks,
statues and things like that.
Things are nice and all.
But
But
again,
what I'm talking about in general, I'm talking about the idea of buying what is technically a brand new game that is just, in a way, arbitrarily being sold in an archaic way at a $49 price point.
I know, but the whole
No, I think that's just so they meet their
I don't know
overhead.
if it's going to be $49. I'm just saying,
If they are,
devil's advocate.
let's say if
I'm just
they're
saying it's for argument's
20,
sake.
40, 50, I don't think it's set that. I don't think that they're doing that to make a
Homebrew
nostalgic
games.
I
mean, Atari 2600
Oh, no, I
homebrew
understand
games
that.
sell
I
for
understand that.
$50 complete in the box.
I understand that that is the price point. It wouldn't be done just to be just for a nostalgic price point. I'm just saying in general, just to be.
It's ironic that is a part of the nostalgia. You're right, but I really think they're just trying to meet their bottom line by setting the price like that. The actual profit on each one, if they're selling them for $50, is probably $10 or something. It's probably not.
Now, the one last thing we'll mention about this, again, and this has been brought up online, a lot of forums I'm on, is that people are really questioning the development process of the games, where it's gotten to the point now where with both homebrew and indie and big budget games that all come out on different systems digitally and in physical form, now because of the internet, no game is ever released as a final copy. There are always updates and things like that.
Right.
And so now yes, the system will have some SD card or interface or something like that, I believe, that can update. But then it's like, well, what's the point of the cartridge if you can't update it?
So there will be patching. That's interesting. I'm
not saying that there will be. I'm saying, what if there needs to be?
Right. Well, this is that.
It's like you're hedging your bet there. It's like, here's a nostalgic console, but it's not really a nostalgic console. It's not really a nostalgic console.
And this is a development timeline that is gone. It went extinct with the N64, not even maybe PS2, Xbox. Actually, no. There were Xbox. I remember Xbox games. Some of them had patches, but it went extinct just about with that generation. We can't a patch. We'll be out of business. We can't release a game that's that screwed up.
Yeah, I mean, it's that is the most interesting for all of the quote problems that this solves with loading times and download time and whatever they view as an inconvenience, right? And they say that having something on a cartridge will solve all of those woes. You're going to reintroduce all of the problems of that era. It's most especially when somebody finds that bug on level 2 that crashes the game, and you can't, if you pick up that item, you're done. The game, you can't finish it. Then hey, welcome to nostalgia. Welcome to classic gaming. This is what we had to live with.
Games were like that.
Yeah,
Officially released games would come with like massive bugs like that.
Yep.
And
we lived through it. I can't remember anything of that era being completely catastrophic where a game that was released to market on the Nintendo or the Genesis, prevented you from getting through it. Maybe there were things where
there was a DS game, I think Bubble Revolution, that you couldn't finish. You got to like level 30 and you couldn't go any further. They had to reissue the game.
The most infamous one that I can remember was Impossible Mission.
It was literally impossible
for the 7800. That was impossible because it was a bug.
Yeah. So that's always going to be a problem, and especially in this day and age with where we're so used to that. We're like, hey, there's something wrong with this game, and then the next time you boot it up or the next time you turn on your iPad, it's like, hey, there's an update, and that's fixed.
Not that we're advocating releasing busted products just to patch them later,
but they all do it now.
Yeah. Well, the industry is much smarter. You have a much smarter user base that is far more aware of the fact that things get fixed. So,
all right. So our next topic, I don't know much to say about it, but it's basically it just come up. I guess it's recent. This has come up that the U.S. Copyright Office has, I believe, was requested.
They were petitioned.
Yeah, petitioned by the
museums, I think.
It was.
I'm not sure if it came from.
It was an organization called the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Yes, EFF, which has been around for forever, really, and they fight for kind of First Amendment things and fair use things involving anything electronic, really. They were on the forefront of the fight in home video and VCRs and things like that, and now. And I think what precipitated this was the Internet Archive putting out these reams of arcade games and console games that you could play via, I guess, Flash, right on their website. And everybody was like, and I think we talked about it on a previous episode. We're like, oh, how are they going to do that? And then one of the reasons they were able to do it was that the Internet Archive, www.archive.org, they actually have a waiver from, I believe it's the Library of Congress, that they can basically put most electronic media like that on their website for public use, and they don't get killed, in terms of
so
being
kids,
sued.
If you're looking for those DS full sets,
Wow.
go to the Internet Archive. You get your Pokemons. They have the hacked Pokemons there with all the special Pokemons in them.
So our resident legal expert, Mike here.
I haven't really read too much about this.
Well, you're not trying the case.
Yeah. Look, it's based on what I know. It sounds to me that a bunch of museums and archivists want the Copyright Office to grant an exception to the DMCA that would allow
the DMC is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Which has a provision prohibiting hacking and like circumventing security measures in the software. They're petitioning for an exception to that rule that would allow certain circumventions to bring software to a fully functional state after things like servers are shut down or online functionality.
They're terming it Abandon, the
Yeah.
Abandonware, as we all know, which is not really. I mean,
Yeah.
we've always taken Abandonware to say, oh well, let's download it, let's use it.
Well,
It's somewhere.
Abandonware is whenever you won't get sued for doing whatever you're going to do.
Well,
it's not the case. but
Well,
I'm just saying.
Abandonware,
It's like
it's
it's not a technical
It's
term.
an
I
assumption.
don't think that's a technical term.
No, it's just
it's
just assumed.
Yeah.
Nobody's put out nobody's Electronic
Yeah, look
Arts
that up.
Accolade. They're not doing anything but Test
Abandonware.
Drive from 1990.
if someone asked me what Abandonware is, off the top of my head, I would say it's a piece of software that is no longer being monitored by any commercial entity or the software's original
ignored by
author.
its owner.
Yes.
And manufacturer.
And this is separate from intellectual property because
Yeah.
a lot of
No support
Abandonware
Yeah.
is still held as intellectual property.
Exactly. No, that's true.
The trademarks.
What's happening here, though, is that these preservationists want to be able to, when a server gets shut down, online functionality doesn't work, or software just sort of like stops functioning completely because it's not being supported anymore. They want to be able to circumvent whatever security features are in that software in order to get it back to a playable state. Now, this is something that people have been doing for a long time. I mean, I think Phantasy Star Online still has an online community on the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
How long has that been going on? People use tunneling software to keep certain online play.
Yeah, if you want to play Time Splitters Future Perfect on your PS2 with your buddies, in another state, you guys got to set up your PCs and set up that fake PlayStation 2 network environment and have those systems talk to each other.
And this sounds reasonable as far as if you're going to preserve software, it's got to be functional software.
200 people doing it.
But the ESA says no. They're gonna. They wrote. I believe they wrote to the Copyright Office saying that no. Hacking is hacking. We can't allow this exception.
Right, and that's because any step that you need to take to circumvent any measure of protection that's on any piece of software, they view as like a criminal activity. Now, let's call a spade for what it is. The industry that we love so dearly, the video game industry, they love selling us the same thing every year, over and over again. Nintendo will sell us Super Mario Brothers for the NES on their next console. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
If there's an next console.
Yeah, it's... they want to protect their financial future to some degree. It's, they also have other things that they're banking on, but they've grown to love the ability to resell you previous intellectual products that they own, that they may have restored, that they may have upscaled, that they may be providing its original state. They want to protect that, and if the Copyright Office allows Joe User to be able to take their original floppy disk copy of Prince of Persia from their Commodore 64 and extract that code through whatever method that they do and plop it onto whatever modern system, and if they can get it to run, then they don't need to buy the remastered version for iOS or the the port of the ROM of the original version for Wii or whatever the case may be. They don't want that to happen.
I think it's probably even simpler than that. A lot of these developers and publishers probably use similar code for these protection schemes. So if one of their games gets cracked by a museum or something like that, it opens up future games that they might be using the same software. I don't know. I'm just
or
assuming,
opens up
but
a precedent.
Yeah.
Also, you allowed us to do it here. Why are you angry if we did it here? We're doing exactly the same thing.
Well, the other thing is the motivation. Is the motivation to say, oh, we want to play Frogger on Atari 2600 emulator and not be arrested for it, or something like that, or is it, oh, well, your your massive multiplayer online game, you shut it down after 2 years. What the hell? We spent all this money on it. We want to be able to continue to play it, which I think most gamers, people would side with. And there's the other thing, which you guys are just discussing, which is, oh, I've got a PS4. I want to be able to play, Super Mario Galaxy on it or something weird, some wacky, thing conceptually. And here I'm going to do it, and don't sue me.
The DMCA has so many problems, just so many problems. This particular issue, I think, is very similar to back in 1984. There was a case, Sony versus Universal, over VCRs. Now it was mostly about the fact that the VCRs existed at all, where the idea that you could use it to record stuff. The companies didn't like that, and but the court said that no, there's a lot of non-infringing uses of the VCR, so they allowed the VCR. But part of that case was related to basically time shifting, the idea of using a VCR for personal use to record something on TV so you can watch it later, and that was declared fair use, as far as I believe. And this is kind of similar. The idea that here you have a game, whether MMO or something like that, I don't know, Final Fantasy 11 or whatever, World of Warcraft, and it's available now. But then you have people that are using tools, the VCR equivalent, to time shift and say, well, I want to have this experience 10 years from now. It's a little different, but the argument could be made that there's similarity there. There's parity to that.
Yeah, the only difference there is the VCR didn't. Well, it wasn't coded, obviously, but the VCR didn't really.
It didn't manipulate.
It didn't alter code,
yeah.
which is they're hacking. Taping something off of the TV back then was not hacking.
Well, that's interesting because it wasn't until the invention of macrovision, which was not only placed on retail video cassettes, but some cable broadcasts actually included macrovision to prevent.
Is that what you try to record? You get it all scrambled.
Yep, and then people would create, macrovision removers, which you put between two VCRs if you were copying a tape, or if you had a cable broadcast, like let's say you had Showtime or whatever cable company might put that macrovision broadcast version on their thing, and you could remove it. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But the reality of this, outside of this request that the FFA or the EFF, that the EFF, EMF, that band from the 90s that did that unbelievable song, No, okay, never mind. Electromagnetic fields. So, outside of the request that the EFF is making of the Copyright Office, this is going on. This stuff is happening. It's like, the hundreds of people or thousands of people that are doing this on a regular basis, like uploading ROMs, downloading ROMs, making emulators, cracking game protection, keeping servers alive. All this stuff is going on. Right. And then this official thing happens over here with the government, and those people are like, huh?
Yeah, kind of a lost
People
cause.
Are asking if they can actually... You're asking the government if we're just doing it.
Yeah.
We've just been doing this stuff, man. Shoveling these ROMs onto these servers for years.
Well, it was like the guys who I think that they got a C and D from Nintendo. The guys who trying to remake Super Mario 64 and
that happens all the time.
They did get a
they
season.
must have.
Look, with things like that.
Not?
These people, they amaze me. They want their e-cred. They want to make these ROM hacks, or they want to do these like big time unofficial remakes. But they, rather than doing the smart thing and just doing it and putting it out there, they want their e-cred. They want to pretend like they're doing something legit, and then they get surprised when they get the C and D.
Well, it is what it is.
Because the fact is, owners of IPs have to protect their IP. You lose a trademark otherwise. Sure. So they have to send out these CDs.
Oh, look what happened recently with Atari and Jeff Minter. They were like, hey, and this is Atari with all history removed. This is Atari as just
some French guy,
a corporate entity now that owns the intellectual property of the Atari logo, the Atari games as properties, but it's nobody who worked for Atari back when Tempest was originally created. It was nobody who worked for Atari during their heyday, during their arcade era, during their home computer era. It's just people who happen to own it saying, "Hey, that game, that's Tempest that you're making for PlayStation. There, you shouldn't make that. You can't make that. Don't make that, and you then don't put that out for anything else." And Jeff Minter is like, "What?"
Well, he probably could have. I think he could have fought it and won, but he was just like, "It's not worth it.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do?"
Well, that and the game got out. I mean, like he commercially released it for a while. It just. I don't know if they're blocking those. Like, they didn't pull it off of the PlayStation Store. It's just he can't do any newer versions of it for, like, PlayStation 4. I think it's on Vita and pretty much whatever else. Which kind of stinks, but, hey, the reality is that the government is going to make these decisions. There's going to make these rulings. They're going to say, it's not okay for you to archive this. It is okay for museums. Maybe it isn't. We'll find out. But, as we know, there's a world of people out there that's just going to keep doing it. So I'm not worried. I've never personally, as an enthusiast and a hobbyist of everything, I've never been worried that this stuff will be preserved. It's going to be preserved. There are people out there meticulously, like, dumping ROMs and copying discs and taking apart old arcade machines and, like, taking the EEPROM the EEPROMs out or whatever they are and dumping those. So, yes, a lot has been lost to time, but there is a staggering amount of stuff that has been archived. And it's like you boot up a good version of MAME and you get a full set and you load it up and you can see there's like 10,000, 20,000, dumps of just arcade machines from 1970 something to the present time. They've dumped and archived stuff that they've never been able to successfully emulate, but it's archived. Like, they have ROMs that they can't physically, or when you boot up a game, it'll say, there's problems with this game that are known that we haven't been able to figure out yet, but it runs. It's about 90%. So it's happening.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the future.
So, one last thing in this segment, since I'm wearing this shirt.
Wouldn't that just slice the baseball in half?
Yeah, I guess it would, unless, it was an antimatter baseball, I don't know. But Star Wars Episode 7, of course, coming out this year. They just released the second trailer, which was the first one that had some of the original cast in it, so forth and so on. Obviously, a lot of buzz about that. This past weekend, they just had as part of that release, they did it at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, California. And one of the other things they had at Celebration was they had the new Star Wars Battlefront game set up for people to play. And obviously I wasn't there, but I went online and I saw the gameplay footage of this thing. Now, again, I don't have the newer console. I believe it was PS4 that it was the footage. And unless it's a cutscene, holy shit. I mean, I'm telling you, it looks as real as I've ever seen a game. Now, there's probably other games that look, like the Uncharted that came out that was shown at the PlayStation, what was that? The PSX.
Whatever they're
in Vegas. What was that show?
Yes, I know you.
Can't think of it now.
Yeah, they're Sony, their own Expo thing. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so, that looked incredibly lifelike. But I'm telling you, you got to watch it. The trail for the Battlefront. I couldn't believe it. Absolutely could not believe it. They were showing like the different characters, and one was a Sullust. I think it was he was the co-pilot on the Millennium Falcon in Return of the Jedi. Yeah. And by the way, rest in peace. That actor has passed away in the last year. Nien Nunn, that was his name. But it was like one of those guys, and I was like, wow. And one of the reasons that I've always said, people say, "Oh, this game looks real." The step that they've really made in this latest generation forward has been in lighting. That was a thing that I always thought was fake. It wasn't even like the polygons or the textures or to me the lighting always looked terrible. Lighting and like the player movements. But unless it was unless that was a cutscene. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean,
was it a cutscene?
I don't think so. I don't know. And we've learned to speculate, appropriately at early footage of games. So we'll see. But if it's using some of the technology that that LucasArts was going to use on that canceled Boba Fett game, that similarly looked really, really good. That whatever it was called, Project 13 or 1313.
Yes.
Something like that. That
1313.
That looked really good. So if they have those artists, those software people working on this, I believe it's DICE is doing this. The guys who do the Battlefield games.
Yes.
So, they're talented. I enjoyed those Star Wars Battlefront games, and I hope that this one is as good. Uncharted 4 was shown at it was at E3. It was actually at E3 that they showed that footage.
Oh, okay.
During their E3 2014 press conference. So, yeah, Star Wars. May the Force be with us and be with you. Hey, we're back with our favorite section of our podcast every week or every month, every 2 months. Show and tell. It's show and tell time, kids. What do you got, Greg?
I'm going first?
Yep. Well, you got all your stuff out.
All right. So I brought a lot of magazine/books type. Well, they're books. So I'll start with those first.
They're novelizations.
So these are a little. I probably have other ones, but these are my somewhat collection of the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s official kind of strategy guide / game review hint books that were put out. I'll start at the top. This is the most famous one, which is the official Nintendo Player's Guide from, I think, 1987. And this one had pretty much all of the major games. There wasn't a lot of games in here, but all the major ones that were available on the system.
There weren't a lot of games at the time it was published.
Yeah, no, do you want to be the hand model here?
Oh, I love this. I love this book. This is just perfect graphic design, and it's just so you want to say nostalgia? This is nostalgia. This book, to anybody who grew up with an NES, this is nostalgia.
Now, I had one back then.
Got the stickers.
Yes, it still has the original stickers. This is not my original copy. My original copy was trashed. Because what we used to do as kids back then in elementary school was if you were playing a certain game and one of your friends had this book and you needed to know hints on the game, I just ripped the page out.
If you needed to know how to back dunk shot in double dribble,
I'd tear out the double dribble page and hand it to you. And so it became pretty much a mess, and I think I threw it out eventually.
What's really cool about this book, not to go on and on and on about it, but you can tell that, I mean, this was in an era they didn't have technology to capture a screen.
Right.
I'm almost certain that all of these were photographs that were taken off of a actual monitor, which was very commonplace for the time. You can kind of see the glow here. They probably had to, darken the space that the monitor was in. But the maps are all hand-drawn, hand-illustrated. You can see the... This was very likely graphic artists' quality dye that was used.
And the Zelda... Metroid's in there, right?
Yep, Zelda 1 and 2 and
yes,
Metroid.
Those were...
essential.
I mean, you couldn't play the games back then.
A game like Metroid is pretty obtuse. And I mean, look at the detail in this map. It got to the point where you got good enough at a game like Metroid where you could do a run-through without it, but that first time through, man, you needed to know where to find the ice beam and the screw attack and everything else. Great stuff. This is so great. I love this.
So, and this was in 1987. I think that this series here, Nintendo, came out. This is 91. I'd say probably around 1991. So this is the NES game the Nintendo Game Atlas, NES Game Atlas. So this was sort of an update to this, and it was mostly maps and things like that for a lot of the few games you got, like Castlevania 2 and Ninja Turtles, all the Mario games in there. There might be a loose page or two in there. I don't remember.
The different routes in Castlevania 3.
Yeah.
Castlevania 2, that's another game similar to Zelda 2. Like, if you didn't have some kind of guide at the time, there are things that the game requires you to know and to do, actions where you have to, like, kneel down in a certain spot or, you know, collect a certain number of items and bring them to a certain place. There's no way you'd ever figure it out without some kind of...
Now, the only difference is that, again, this book was published in 1991. Most of those games had been out for several years.
Yeah.
Whereas at least with the Player's Guide, it was pretty up to date in terms of, you know, the games that had only been out a year or weren't even out yet.
Yeah.
When you bought the thing. So this was a lot, the Player's Guide was a lot handier.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think this was... Right, and in terms of availability, the Player's Guide, the black one, was sold everywhere. I think that these other guides may have only been mail order, probably through Nintendo Power or whatever. This one's a little bit different. So this is the top secret passwords for, I believe, the NES. No, actually, this one has Super Nintendo and I think Game Boy as well. Yeah, I think it does. So
I see a Game Boy on the back.
yeah, it has different games, and it's like color coded to figure out which ones, and it's just passwords. But the reason I like it is I love the little screen caps. I love just reading through them.
Hey kids, you need to know how to get to level 9 in Boxel. It's N spade X2. You heard it here first. I think we're the only podcast in history that has ever given out the code to Boxel level 9. Yeah, a lot of Game Boy stuff. Game Boy, they didn't really incorporate a lot of save batteries in their games other than like the big Nintendo releases, so a lot of passwords going on there. Very cool.
So that's a nice one. And now this one is sort of the only Mario. It's called Mario Mania. It's also a Player's Guide, and I believe it also came out in 1991. So this one is... Yoshi's, I don't know what, Super Mario World, Meet Mario. I think this is almost entirely just Super Mario World. I think.
Really? Nothing else? No other Mario game? Why?
Maybe it is the earlier ones. I don't know.
Well, we've got, let's see. It's Meet Mario, Super Mario World.
It's the table of contents really is just whatever they felt like.
Okay, so in the beginning,
it's a retrospective.
We at least have a retrospective. It's not like how to get through Super Mario 3, but it's...
Well, you've already gotten that on the other guides.
Yeah, see Super Mario World. Oh, is this like a fold-out section?
Maybe.
Yeah, look at that. Now, my question is, does this go into like the New Game Plus when you get all 100 or with 98 like stars? Star World, when you complete Star World. Special World. Yeah, Special World. Welcome to Planet Mario. Yep, there it is. If you complete the Funky course, you'll gain entrance to Star Road 7, which leads to Yoshi's house in a very different dinosaur land. That's kind of the New Game Plus in Super Mario World. If you do everything that there is to do, you're treated to a harder version of the game where all the Koopa shells have been replaced with Mario heads. It's pretty funky.
And now this one is, again, it's 1991. This is the Game Boy Player's Guide. And this one, basically, it has certain games that it centers on. Super Mario Land, Castlevania, Turtles, Batman, Operation C, Double Dragon, etc. And then there's Tetris, Dr. Mario, some RPG, sports games. And it does, like the other books, I mean, it goes into maps and stages and things. And then at the back, there's a little like blurb on all the games that it didn't go through in depth, let's say.
Very cool. That Game Boy Contra, that's one of my favorite Contra games. I love that one. Interesting. Again, you can, it appears that they did not have some kind of dedicated technology to deal with these because you can see like the varying shades of photography. Like some of them are really dark, very high contrast, and then some of them have like a kind of rosy color. Yeah. Here you can see like a division. Like as they scrolled across this screen, they had to like put two photos together.
The other thing is these books were all developed at Nintendo Japan and then translated. So I've read some of these, and sometimes the English gets a little tricky. Got
a page stuck together here, as happens frequently with Greg's collections. It was a picture of Princess Peach.
One of these books, I don't remember which one. It may have been the Game Atlas, but the guy sent it and didn't put it in like a like plastic bubble wrap or anything, and it had rained that day, and like the bottom corner got like a little wet.
Oh,
and I was
okay.
Like,
well, at least the entire thing didn't get.
All right, and then finally, it's the Super NES Player's Guide, which highlights pretty much all of the first year or so of SNES games, I think. And it does the same thing as the Game Boy one does. So this is actually my favorite because it really goes in really well with of the 91-ish things.
Well, if there was ever any question as to how Greg got so good at games, he's got all the guides.
Yeah, well, I only bought these in the last few years.
Well, he got good at games recently.
Some of these, as I said, I've gotten them off forums in the past where people sell them for $5 or $10, or eBay if they're cheap enough. And believe it or not, Amazon. I got the I'll go over the Genesis ones next, but I got those. I think I got almost all of these off of Amazon. The only bad thing about Amazon is you can't see the condition. You just kinda, but all of these said like they were like good or like okay, and I'm like all right, and they're like pristine. So
yeah, excellent.
So basically, they are called the official Sega Genesis Power Tips book. These were produced by the I believe Prima. Yeah, Prima did these, and they were all done by the UK staff. So you'll get to a point where if you're, and these were in like 92, 93. There's like, for instance, there's an NHL game, and they don't call it like NHL hockey. They called it like EA hockey or something or whatever. But this is the same thing where it has
Mr. Jonathan Madden's American-styled football gaming.
You know, there's three volumes of it. It's all Sega Genesis. And it gives an in-depth review of the games. There are tips as well, but, you know. Oh, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I need to beat that.
Spoiler alert, there's another Crusade after that one. For something else. Very cool.
This is a volume 2.
I like that they have the graph paper Sega classic design for all of their game boxes in the United States. Prominently featured in the Sega Master System box design.
Yeah, the only other thing here is I don't think these are pictures. I think at this point these people look like they have screen capture technology. But there's, like, you could tell, like, everything's blown up too much. It lost color.
What else you got?
And so, in terms of reviews, so many episodes ago, I reviewed the Hardcore Gaming 101 Sega Arcade Classics Volume 1 book, which is... Did you buy this?
Yeah, immediately after that episode, I went to Amazon and got myself a copy.
I mean, these are cheap. They're unbelievable. The reviews, they review every port of the games. It's unbelievable. So, the second book that they did... this one may have been... I don't know if that was authorized, but this one is unofficial and unauthorized. And it's the Castlevania retrospective, where they literally, up until when this came out, this book is maybe a year old.
Did they dish on Simon Belmont? Or they're like, he's a slut?
No.
Like, unofficial biography of the life and times of Belmont family.
Well, they hit every single game, and they make sure to remind you of the times in which this new game is reusing this Belmont and how this Belmont guy relates to the other Belmont, and it's I lost track of all the damn Belmonts.
Yeah.
But this is, and again, it has the game, and then it talks about if there are ports, compares them to one another. It's unbelievable how many games they go through.
Does it start with Dracula's Castle, whatever that arcade
It's in there somewhere.
game is?
Well, that wasn't the first game.
No.
It starts with the original Castlevania.
But wasn't
the
the
Famicom version? That was in That was like '88.
the arcade game?
Yeah, that was after the console one.
We're looking at Castlevania 3 for listeners. We're on page 14.
Yeah.
For those of you who are listening to the audio version of the podcast.
And they, again, I believe that all of their books are available in a Kindle version also. And they also have a new book that came out this year, which is it's focuses on Konami shooters, which I haven't got yet. I haven't gotten yet. I should get it soon, and then I can review that.
Man, there are quite a few Castlevania games. For all those people that... I mean, and I like me a Castlevania game as much as the next guy, but for all those people that complain, oh, they don't make enough Castlevania, they make more Castlevania games for DS.
I mean, they
make
talk,
more
and
Castlevania
they
games
even
for...
talk about
There are
games,
so many Castlevania
They even
games.
talk about games that were influenced by Castlevania, like Eight Eyes or the Akamoji, the Kid Dracula, whatever the hell
Sure.
that is.
Man, reoccurring themes.
Yeah.
Reoccurring themes in Castlevania. Dracula. Whips. Skeletons. Very cool. Very, very cool.
We're not answering that. So one last book. I picked this up at the Digital Press store about a week ago. I have no idea what this is. It's sealed. I didn't ask Joe. I probably should have. I don't know. It's in Japanese.
It's highly toxic. It's been sealed for good reason.
It's a Super Mario Kart SNES, some kind of a book. As you can see, it's in Japanese. I have not opened it.
We're going to open it live.
Opening it on the air, see what the hell it is. But I love official vintage books.
All right, here we go. We got some vintage book smell up in this podcast.
I wonder if I'm destroying the value by opening it, but...
Well, it was only sealed at the Digital Press store, so...
That's true.
They want to know if we have a memory card for Nintendo 64. They're calling.
All right, so
There we go.
it's glued
It's
on.
like Al Capone's
oddly.
vault.
What are you doing over there? Okay. This is just a dust cover. Oh, weird. There's the book itself. All right, all Japanese, fantastic. And here, so it's like a little kitty kind of art book. Can't read the table of contents.
Nope.
And so it's pictures and descriptions, and it's like a strategy guide
In Japanese.
in Japanese.
Well, if it's in Japanese, you're probably reading it the wrong way. Shouldn't you go start at the back, go forward,
What?
right? Yeah, they read from right to left.
Yeah, but they're not page wise.
Yeah, usually. Well, in manga, anyway.
So it looks like it has. So it's got little screen caps of the boards, and I like it.
Money well
Even though
spent.
I can't read it. Well, you know how close I've been over the years.
What?
Battery.
Oh, we're running low on batteries.
Oh, come on. I don't know, do you want to...
Yeah, sure. Do you want to do your Dreamcasts?
All right,
then...
so then I had some repro games that I got. This is from a fellow on Flickr, I think. It's like Dreamcast. I think his email is Dreamcasting. Yeah, it's Dreamcasting at btinternet.com. He's also on Flickr with the user Dreamcast. He has tons of Dreamcast repros because there was a lot of games that weren't released here on the Dreamcast, many of which were complete. This is Half-Life. It's like a gold edition. Obviously it's a CDR.
Unreleased
Yeah.
to commercially on Dreamcast.
This one, he did like a laminated cover, but the manual is just a regular, printed paper. But this one includes Half-Life, which was supposed to be released for the Dreamcast and was not, and there was like a sequel kind of expansion called Blue Shift, and it's also on this, so it has everything on here. Yeah, the exclusive new mission, Blue Shift. This game has a bug where you cannot start it with a VMU in, or it won't work. You have to take the VMU out. I think you can save once you've done that, but you can only have that one game on the VMU. The only bad thing about this game is it looks great on the Dreamcast, but because the Dreamcast only has one analog controller, it makes playing a game like this very, very difficult because you have to move using the Dreamcast, the colored buttons, A, B, X, Y. It's
harkens back to an era of playing GoldenEye with that one analog, or
it's worse than that. The other one here is Propeller Arena. This game came out in Japan. It came out in Europe. It was about to be released in the United States, but September 11th happened, and Sega decided not to release it because in this game you can accidentally, obviously, fly your plane into a building in major cities, I believe even including New York. But otherwise, it's an absolutely fantastic game. It was designed by AM2, which was Sega's main design group at the time, and it's 3D propeller game. It's fantastic. I mean, and so those were the Dreamcast. Now, for TurboGrafx, I finally found somebody who was making good repros for those, because for the Turbo Duo or PC Engine CD, the games are very, very expensive, and some of them only came out in Japan. So first, this one is Super Air Zonk. Super Air Zonk came out in North America. The CD version complete in the CD is probably going to run a couple $100 easily. So I was never going to get that. But I love the artwork on it, and the guy did a fantastic job. He does his own kind of custom disc artwork because the discs back then just had writing on them and nothing else. This is not a manual, but it is a laminated insert.
I like that this is obviously one of those inkjet printable discs where you can see it's not a piece of paper covering the disc with like a printed image on it. It's printed directly onto the surface of the disc, which is nice because it'll never peel off or anything like that. On the back, it's your regular CDR.
So even though this is actually, I believe, a terrible game, it's reviewed pretty badly.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's a sequel to Air Zonk?
Yeah, I guess so. Super
Air Zonk.
And it does say reproduction in the places it should. And he had other ones. He had like Bonk 3 that he makes tons of different ones. He runs a Facebook group called Turbo Reproduction. So if you're interested, you have to go to that group and try and join it, I believe. He's in Canada. This fella for the Dreamcast was in the UK. This is Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams. Also, it's not a manual. It's just the insert. And this is I really like the Cotton games, and this also came out in North America. It's not as expensive Super Air Zonk, but it's up there. I mean, it's probably
it's like a flying shooting type game.
Yeah, that's on the back.
It's like a 2D flying shooter, kind of like a little witch girl, and reminiscent of Kiki's Delivery Service, the Miyazaki film.
And then the coup de grace is the reason I went to the guy is Castlevania, of course, Dracula. I forget what it's called.
Dracula X.
Yeah, in Japanese.
Rondo of Blood.
Rondo of Blood in English, which is one of the greatest Castlevania games of all.
One of the hardest, too.
Yeah.
Oh, God, it's so brutally difficult.
So this one, the guy actually did
nice
a printed
manual.
It's not laminated the same way as the other one, but it is a printed manual nonetheless. In English.
Like the game.
Yeah.
That's an English translated version, right?
Yeah, that was the kind of fan-translated one. However, as I recall, so when the game starts, and like you said, this is a very nice, glossy label.
Yeah.
When the game starts, there's the intro in German.
Yeah.
But that's all the
versions, yeah.
But I believe after that point, it's all in English. So people are wondering, well, where did they get the voice acting from? And I believe the time Konami commissioned the English voice acting, they just never did anything with it.
Right.
Because for some reason, they didn't release it here.
Oh, so it has the English voice overs instead of German?
No.
The English in the game.
German is just in the intro
opening
cutscene.
the cartoon.
And I believe the rest of it, is in English.
Cool.
They might have ripped the voice samples from Dracula X Chronicles.
Oh, the PSP release.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, they may have included them in that
maybe.
as part of the historical package.
So these will run on a Turbo Duo. I guess if it's, I don't. Do you have to mod that to play CDRs?
No, you don't.
I don't have that system. It's too expensive. Whatever. I played it on an emulator on the original Xbox or on the PC.
Oh, wow. It'll actually just okay, because they're pretty much 1-to-1 disc images.
Yeah.
So pretty quick turnaround from my last show and tell to the current one now. Last time I did not have the final U.S. release for Virtual Boy Jack Brothers. Now I do. You can see it cost $12.99 at one point in time.
Yeah.
I didn't pay $12.99 for it. This was Blockbuster Video. It was probably distributed to Blockbusters primarily at that time. I think that was likely one of the only retail locations that had it late in the life of the Virtual Boy. And this is what I did with my now complete Virtual Boy collection. I went, based on what I had seen on the internet, people were using DS cases, the red versions that Nintendo used for some of their re-releases of their high-selling games. And their labels that somebody on the Project VB forums, which is a dedicated Virtual Boy forums, made these especially for these cases. And on the inside of the case, I've used an X-Acto knife to physically remove the part of the plastic that holds the DS cartridge. I actually cut through it, had to take an X-Acto and a straight edge and cut multiple times to make it all the way through the plastic. And after two or three of these, there's 14 in total, I was really tired. So it was a long day that I did that. And then I got some project foam, which are like 8x10 sheets of foam, and I cut them to the right size for the case, and I cut them out so you can fit a game inside of them, and it'll hold a Virtual Boy game in place so it doesn't rattle around inside your little things. And here's the entire collection. Tetris 3D.
So this looks simple.
Waterworld. Yeah, it's a pretty simple task, but it's also pretty laborious. You get started on something like this, you do one or two, and you're like, man, I've got 10 left of these things to do. Wario Land. Popping out there. Yep, so now I can display all 14 US releases of every Virtual Boy game that was commercially released in the United States, and I've made a decision that I'm not going to collect the Japanese exclusives because, man, the prices on those, it's like upwards of $400 to $800 for some of the rare ones. So I can live with just the U.S. releases. And this is the rare and valuable one, Jack Brothers, now complete in my collection. The only one that I actually own the box and materials for. The rest of them I have all loose copies of the game because most people didn't keep their Virtual Boy stuff. They never knew how valuable they'd be.
So if you had the manuals, they would fit in those boxes.
Oh yeah, I have one or two that have manuals. Which one does? The Bomberman game, of course. Yeah, Panic Bomber. Let's see, they fit in the. They curl up a little bit there, but they basically fit in there.
Well, if I come across any, I'll have to.
Yeah, if you
try to secure them.
Yep, if you come across a
Rarely,
stack of
I
Virtual Boy
rarely
instructions.
see Virtual Boy instructions.
Yeah, they're as rare as the boxes, I would imagine, at this point. So that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.